Hi there. The book I'm going to discuss today, I read as a result of watching the TV drama. Rather like previous books I reviewed, Manhunt, the two Manhunt books by Colin Sutton. I read both of those as a result of watching the dramas starring Martin Clunes on the TV. Well, this was the drama Stephen, which I watched fairly recently, and it's a dramatisation of the Stephen Lawrence murder and the eventual resolution of it. And the detective Chief Inspector Clive Driscoll was played by Steve Coogan. Anyway, it made me want to read his book, Clive Driscoll's book, In Pursuit of the Truth. And I've just finished reading it, and it's a superb book. Clive Driscoll joined the police at age 28 after working for the London Ambulance Service for several years. And this stood him in good stead, really, because as an initiation, they take young officers who are undergoing the probation to an autopsy, or post-mortem as we call it, and in order to show them the grisly side of the job. But he had already experienced death, accidents, road traffic collisions, so on, for several years, and all he suggested was they all go and have a full English breakfast afterwards. So he kind of passed that test. So he goes through Hendon, the training centre. He was probably the oldest guy in the whole course, and back then it was still very much still using drill, saluting, marching around and so on. And then he is a probationer, he's on division, and moving forward very, very quickly, he's involved in the riots in Brixton. They don't know it's riots, just sent somewhere as a serial, and he's right in the thick of it. And I'll quote directly from the book. I've used the word mob, and I will use other pejorative terms to describe my fear as a young officer. Just hold on 1 second. On the receiving end of that behaviour on 11th of April 1981. Some people will jump on that as typical police racism. To them I respectfully say that when you're watching three blokes getting ready to spear you with a 10-foot scaffolding pole, the last thing you care about is the colour of their skin. Colour, though, was not the reason we were being attacked. I would only learn later that the riot had been triggered by an incident the day before. Police had tried to assist a young black male, Michael Bailey, who had been stabbed. While they called for help, passers-by began to accuse them of ignoring the victims. When the police tried to move the man, a crowd of men appeared and tried to claim the body. The man later died from the stab wounds, and witnesses said it was as a result of police brutality. Word spread, and from that moment anyone in uniform in the area became a legitimate target. So he sees some of his comrades injured, things thrown at them. One's hit on the head with a mallet that's being thrown, and then after many hours they're taken to get refreshments, and the idea is to send them back out. But the people that are supposed to relieve them don't even know what's going on. And as they're sitting there all dazed, covered in blood and everything, an inspector wanders in and starts berating one of them for not wearing his tie. And a sergeant kind of tells him his fortune. And just aside from the book, it reminded me of a story I heard many years ago. Similar thing, the riots. A police officer gets hit on the head with a brick, his helmet's knocked off. His eyes full of blood, he's dazed, and he starts crawling towards safety. He's crawling, and he sees a pair of toe caps, and there's blood's dripping on these gleaming toe caps, and a voice says, "Don't you bleed on my boots." And he says, "Oh, I'm sorry, Sarge." He says, "Not a Sarge, I'm an inspector." He said, "Oh, sorry, sir, I didn't realise I'd crawled quite so far." Anyway, Clive Driscoll is deployed to Brixton as his police station, and he really enjoys working there. His role model is the character George Dixon from the movie The Blue Lamp, and subsequently Dixon of Dock Green, who I think many of us of our age group watched. It was a regular thing on Saturdays on TV, and he was sort of what the Met wanted the public to believe the police were like. Meanwhile, the Met CID was rife with corruption. The Obscene Publication Squad, the Flying Squad, and so on, they all came out later. But that was the image that the Met wanted, and Clive Driscoll took this on board, and throughout his career, Dixon was his role model. And there's not many police officers in the modern era would admit that. You know, the sort of kind of Sweeney type of outlook was anathema to George Dixon. So anyway, many of the things, what Clive Driscoll did, he actually asked if he could have a bicycle. They still had them in some police stations, and he wanted to use a bicycle. And one of the older officers who was leaving still had a cape, and Clive asked if he can have his cape. So he's cycling around the manor wearing this cape in the manner of an old-time bobby. And he said actually he got to a lot of the incidents faster than the guys in the cars because of traffic and so on. And he was heavily involved in community policing. And then later on he did a lot of other things, and he actually personally started the first domestic violence unit, certainly in the Met and probably in the UK, and did great work there. And then he was in charge of the Southeast Asian sex crimes unit, and that was involved in a lot of domestic violence, but very specific, and also honour killings, and some dreadful cases, young girls killed by their own family. And in one case he actually managed, against all odds and to the sort of cynicism of his superior officers, to get suspects extradited from the subcontinent. And some of the barriers were that the police over there didn't see it as a big thing. They saw honour killings as being normal. So throughout the book, Clive Driscoll is very much against bullies, and he's very much for the victims. And he spends a lot of time, I was really surprised at this, knowing that he ended up as a senior detective, how long he spent in uniform. He wasn't particularly enamoured of the CID, but then when he joins the CID, he becomes very good at it, and he is the senior investigating officer, SIO, on numerous cases. But throughout the book there's examples of where senior officers are very, very obstructive for no apparent reason. There's hints of corruption in some cases, but in other cases just bloody mindedness and jealousy, and you know, you do it my way or it's the highway sort of thing. Anyway, he's in one of the old police stations, and it's about to be closed, and he finds loads of files, including boxes and boxes and boxes, whole rooms of files relating to the Stephen Lawrence murder. And he realizes that the Met isn't going to pursue it anymore. they've washed their hands of it. They've had the inquiries and so on. There's been a private prosecution, and it's as far as the Met's concerned, it's an embarrassment. So he volunteers to take it on, and after some debate, he's given the job of trying to resolve it. And this is where the family enter the picture. Doreen and Neville Lawrence, the parents of the murdered boy, and he realizes straight away he's got to win their trust, because they have been very, very badly treated by the Met, terribly treated, to the point where an undercover unit which was set up to counter or to infiltrate domestic subversion was used against the Lawrence family to see if they could dig up dirt on them, to counter the narrative that the Lawrence family were very rightly putting out about the Met's lack of success and lack of will. So he has meeting. Well, he doesn't want to meet the family until he can tell them something positive. So he quite assiduously works, and he realizes that it all hinges on forensics. He reenacts the actual murder and films it, and realizes that the accepted narrative was wrong, that it's been down as a brief attack, and with the injuries and so on and the number of people involved, it couldn't have been brief. Therefore, there must have been forensic transfer of material. So he goes outside of the Forensic Science Service and uses outside consultants and sets them the task of finding, and they find fibres. And so then he has a meeting with the family and gives them some encouraging news, and from then on stays in touch with them. And from there they find blood transfer as well, and they're able to charge 2 of the murderers, because a lot of this hinged on a change in the law because of the double jeopardy law. They'd already been tried and acquitted, or the trials had collapsed, and another case had brought about a change in the law, hinging on new evidence, and this forensic evidence, because it could not have been recovered at the time, but the existing forensic tools, was deemed new evidence. Anyway, so he gets 2 of them convicted and puts up a plan to go after the rest of the gang, and he's taken off the case. So the Met throughout didn't want to admit their shortcomings, and anybody who then managed to resolve the case was seen to them as somebody who was going where the Met couldn't go. Now, initially, a lot of what was the problem was local corruption. The father of one of the gang was a noted criminal, and he was paying a detective, and so evidence was withheld and so on, and he obstructed the inquiry. So that was the initial thing, and that's bad enough, but then there was obstruction at very, very senior levels throughout, to the point where the Met were eventually accused of institutional racism. And you've got to say, if that term could ever be applied, the Met would be the definition of it. There's no doubt about it. And I'm skipping over a lot of the criticism that Clive Driscoll makes of the Met and his senior officers in the book, because it's written from within by a chap who is a good man. He plays piano in old people's homes, keeps them entertained. He coaches youth football. He's a totally decent chap, and I'm, sort of a bit hesitant to criticise the police too much because I'm pro law and order, but the Met makes it very, very hard to be pro police. If there were more people like Clive Driscoll there, it would be a far better force. So, as I mentioned, there was the associated drama called Stephen, which was very, very well done. Steve Coogan played Clive Driscoll. I thought he played him well. But the two actors who played Doreen and Neville Lawrence were absolutely spot on. They brought dignity and a measure of communicated the immense loss that they felt, obviously, for this murder. And we heard a lot about racially motivated attacks, and again, if you want a definition of a racially motivated attack, it was that gang of white scum attacking a black lad for no other reason than for the colour of his skin, and murdering him and exulting in it later on because there's surveillance videos of them. So the drama was very good, well worth watching, and overall the book is it's funny in parts. He's got a good writing style, and he demonstrates a very human side to policing, which is often lacking. And as I just said, had there been more people like him in the Met and the police generally, we would be better served. Recommend the book, totally 100%.